Today we'll be reading Acts 5, verses 1 through 16. But a certain man named Ananias, with Sapphira his wife, sold a possession, and kept back part of the price. His wife also being privy to it, and brought a certain part, and laid it at the apostles' feet. But Peter said, Ananias, why has Satan filled thine heart to lie to the Holy Ghost, and to keep back part of the price of the land? Whiles it remained, was it not thine own? And after it was sold, was it not in thine own power? Why hast thou conceived this thing in thine heart? Thou hast not lied unto men, but unto God. And Ananias, hearing these words, fell down, and gave up the ghost. And great fear came on all them that heard these things. And the young men arose, wound him up, and carried him out, and buried him. It was about the space of 3 hours after, when his wife, not knowing what was done, came in. And Peter answered unto her, Tell me whether you sold the land for so much. And she said, Yea, for so much. Then Peter said unto her, How is it that ye have agreed together to tempt the Spirit of the Lord? Behold, the feet of them which have buried thy husband are at the door, and shall carry thee out. Then fell she down straightway at his feet, and yielded up the ghost. And the young men came in, and found her dead, and carrying her forth, buried her by her husband. And great fear came upon all the church, and upon as many as heard these things. And by the hands of the apostles were many signs and wonders wrought among the people. And they were all with one accord in Solomon's porch. Now the rest durst no man join himself to them, but the people magnified them. And believers were the more added to the Lord, multitudes both of men and women, insomuch that they brought forth the sick into the streets, and laid them on beds and couches, that at the least the shadow of Peter passing by might overshadow some of them. There came also a multitude out of the cities round about unto Jerusalem, bringing sick folks, and them which were vexed with unclean spirits, and they were healed every one. We saw in the verses leading up to these that many in the early church were selling their belongings to help each other out. That's amazing care for others. Today's passage reminds us, though, that even within the church, sin can cause conflict. We were introduced to a couple named Ananias and Sapphira. They decided they wanted to join in on this, so they sold something they owned. At the end of chapter 4, we saw that Barnabas did this. We don't know their motivation, but seeing how they went about things makes you kind of wonder if they were more interested in the attention and the applause that came with giving more than the actual giving itself. The text says they brought a portion of the price and they gave it to the apostles. No dialogue is given, but the question put to Sapphira in verse 8 implies that Ananias had either implied or flat out said that this was the full amount. We also know that from verse 4, where Peter tells him that he could have done anything he wanted with his property. He didn't have to sell it. He didn't have to give the money to others. That was all voluntary. Their sin here was lying about what they were doing. They wanted people to think they were more spiritual than they really were. And that's where this passage gets to stepping on toes. Any of us can be guilty of doing good things for the wrong reason. I imagine plenty of money has been given to churches over the years for the sole purpose of making someone feel good about themselves or making them look successful. The same can be said about serving in the church. We can lead a Bible study or fill an important position out of a desire to serve God, or we can do it for the attention and recognition. The key difference is the heart. Jesus pointed out this problem with the religious rulers of his day. In Matthew 15, verses 8 and 9, he applies the words of Isaiah the prophet to the scribes and Pharisees. This people draweth nigh unto me with their mouth, and honoreth me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. But in vain they do worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men. God cautioned Samuel about this when he was sent to find a new king to replace Saul. Looking over Jesse's sons, he took a special interest in one of David's brothers named Eliab. He said, Surely the Lord's anointed is before him. But God said, Look not on his countenance, or on the height of his stature, because I have refused him. For the Lord seeth not as man seeth, for man looketh on the outward appearance, but the Lord looketh on the heart. That's 1 Samuel 16, verse 7. Getting back to our text, we see the severe consequences of Ananias and Sapphira's sin. It cost them both their life. And the outcome of this sad event is shown in verses 11 through 16. Everyone's awe of God was rekindled. It says a great fear came upon all the church. You see, if you're just playing church or acting religious for outward appearances, it shows that you've lost the proper view of God. For while He is loving and gracious, He's also a holy and just God. The writer of Hebrews points that out in chapter 1 of verse 31. It's a fearful thing to fall into the hands of the living God. So if we can't always tell from the outside, that means we each need to examine ourselves. Are you serving God because you love Him and are grateful for what He has done for you? Or are you just going through motions because you want to be seen a certain way? Examine your heart today.